My name's Darci Lynne. I'm 12 years old. I live in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and today I'm going to be doing ventriloquism.
Darci Lynne stole the entire nation's heart with nothing but a puppet, a dream, and a voice that could make grown men cry. The girl who made ventriloquism cool again. The one who didn't just win America's Got Talent, she shut it down. But what if I told you that behind the standing ovations and golden confetti, something quietly began to unravel? What happened next might just break your heart. So don't go anywhere, because at the end of this video, you'll find out how her life has sadly unveiled. Keep your eyes glued till the very end. Darci Lynne's rise to fame on America's Got Talent. In 2017, America was introduced to a young girl from Oklahoma named Darci Lynne Farmer, and within minutes, it seemed like the whole country fell under her spell. She was just 12 years old, wide-eyed, sweet, and clearly a little nervous as she stepped onto the stage of America's Got Talent, holding nothing but a suitcase and a puppet named Petunia. But what nobody knew at that moment, perhaps not even Darci herself, was that her life was about to take a jaw-dropping turn. And really, who could have predicted what would come next? Darci's audition is now considered one of the most unforgettable moments in the show's history. When she opened that suitcase and introduced her pink rabbit puppet to the judges, most people probably expected something cute, maybe even a little funny. But what they got instead was something far more extraordinary. As Darci began singing through Petunia, without moving her lips, mind you, the room fell silent and then erupted. Her rendition of Summertime was not just good, it was shockingly beautiful. The strength of her voice, her control, and the fact that she was doing it all while performing ventriloquism. It was simply beyond belief for someone so young. One might even ask, how could a child manage to pull off something so technically complex and emotionally moving all at once? She stole the spotlight and our hearts. But has Darci Lynne quietly been dealing with something darker? What caused her to step back? Stay till the end, you'll understand why. Mel B, one of the show's judges, was so blown away that she didn't hesitate to slam the golden buzzer, sending Darci straight to the live shows. That one moment, a flurry of golden confetti, an emotional hug, and a shocked little girl crying tears of joy, became viral almost instantly. The audition video soared on YouTube, climbing past 60 million views in what felt like the blink of an eye. People weren't just watching, they were rewatching, sharing, and falling in love with this pint-sized performer from Edmond, Oklahoma. And just like that, Darci Lynne wasn't just a contestant anymore. She was a rising star. As the competition went on, Darci kept raising the bar. She didn't just repeat what had worked, she grew. Each week, she introduced new puppet characters, each with their own unique personality. There was Oscar, the shy mouse with a massive crush on Mel B, and Edna Doorknocker, a bold and hilarious elderly lady who flirted shamelessly with Simon Cowell. And somehow, Darci managed to make all of them feel real. It wasn't just about the ventriloquism or the singing, it was the storytelling, the emotion, the way she gave life to these puppets and made people laugh, cheer, and tear up. You'd have to wonder, how did someone so young understand performance on such a deep level? Her finale performance, a duet with Petunia singing "With a Little Help from My Friends," was a complete showstopper. It was joyful, it was powerful, and it sealed her place in AGT history. When she was announced as the winner of Season 12, it wasn't just a victory, it was a celebration. Darci had become the first ventriloquist in over 10 years to win the show, and only the third child act ever to take home the grand prize. The response was immediate. She was invited on talk shows, featured in magazines, and quickly booked for a nationwide tour. She even got her very own NBC Christmas special, not something that happens every day for someone who was still figuring out middle school homework. The thing that truly set Darci apart wasn't just that she could sing or throw her voice, it was how she did it all at once, effortlessly blending singing, ventriloquism, and comedy into something totally unique. But, as often happens with child stars who become instantly famous, the very thing that propelled her to stardom would later present a challenge. As Darci grew older, she naturally wanted to explore new directions, different types of music, more acting, maybe even just being herself on stage instead of hiding behind a puppet. But the public still largely saw her as the puppet girl, and shifting that image proved difficult. Ventriloquism, once her golden ticket, began to feel a bit like a cage. How do you break out of a mold that the world fell in love with? How do you grow when people still expect the 12-year-old version of you? Even so, Darci has continued to evolve. She's taken on roles in television, returned to AGT as a guest performer, and slowly started incorporating more of her own voice and less of her puppets in her performances. She's expressed, in interviews, a desire to be known for more than just her ventriloquism, that she wants to be recognized as a true entertainer. Her shift from puppets to solo singing. As the years quietly rolled by, Darci Lynne, once crowned as America's Got Talent champion and lauded as a prodigy in ventriloquism, found herself navigating a deeply personal yet publicly visible transformation. But now, nearly a decade later, the girl people remembered had become a young woman of 19, one with growing ambitions and an evolving sense of identity. And that came with a natural question for both her and her audience. Was it time to move beyond the puppets? Darci reportedly shared in an interview with The Oklahoman that she often felt people had frozen her in time, still picturing her as that bright-eyed little girl with Petunia perched on her hand. "I think people have frozen me at 12, she explained, candidly and without a hint of resentment. She wasn't angry about it, just ready for people to understand that she had grown up. What does it mean to outgrow your own success? She seemed to be asking, not with bitterness, but with curiosity. She noted that ventriloquism wasn't even where it all began for her. Singing always came first, she said. Singing is what I grew up doing as long as I can remember. And then the ventriloquism came around. In essence, it wasn't that she'd stumbled into ventriloquism, it had simply become the vehicle that took her into the spotlight. But now, she felt a pull back toward her roots. For many fans who had only ever seen Darci with a puppet in hand, this revelation came as a surprise. After all, hadn't ventriloquism been the very thing that set her apart? Hadn't it been her signature? The thought of her setting aside the puppets might have felt jarring to some, but Darci herself remained clear-eyed. She didn't want to be boxed in, she explained. My mantra is, I don't want to be put in a box or limited in any way. She wasn't necessarily saying goodbye to ventriloquism forever. Instead, she described her shift as opening another door, another pathway. Can't a young woman have more than one passion? Can't she pursue a new dream without abandoning the old? When Darci returned to the stage for AGT, Fantasy League, many assumed she'd bring out her old puppet companions and lean on the familiar. And to some degree, she did at first. For her first performance, she appeared with Petunia, easing the audience into what would soon become a more profound shift. But then, something changed. Mid-performance, she gently set the puppet aside, picked up an electric guitar, and belted out Elton John's I've Got the Music in Me. It wasn't just a performance, it was a declaration. And by the time the semifinals rolled around, Darci made a bold choice: no puppets at all. Instead, she sang a country rock original titled "Push Our Luck," a song she had co-written with local musicians from her home state of Oklahoma. That song wasn't just a musical endeavor, it was a statement of intent. For Darci, this wasn't a gimmick or a strategy to stand out. It was the next step in my life, she said. Imagine the courage it must take to step onto a stage known for celebrating your past self and choose instead to unveil your present one. Of course, such a shift didn't come without resistance. The judges' reactions were mixed, supportive, yes, but also tinged with uncertainty. Simon Cowell, never one to mince words, pointed out that what made Darci unique in the first place was her remarkable blend of singing and ventriloquism. "There are very few people in the world who can do what you do," he remarked. Mel B, on the other hand, seemed to feel that the musical performance had overshadowed the very talent that brought Darci acclaim in the first place. It was a fair point, perhaps, but also one that hinted at a deeper question. Must artists always stay where they're safe? Despite the differing opinions, Darci didn't waver. In fact, after her semifinal performance, even Simon seemed to come around. He told her, "I've always believed the most successful people in life are people who make their own decisions and don't listen to other people. Good for you for sticking with your guns." It was a validating moment, not just professionally, but personally. Darci hadn't merely sung a song, she had bet on herself. What this phase of her journey really highlights is something almost every young adult wrestles with: the process of becoming. Darci Lynne had the voice, the charm, the puppets, and a future so bright. But if everything was going great, why did things take such a heartbreaking turn? Stay with us, because the truth comes out at the end. The emotional toll of reinvention. Behind the stage lights, the cheers of the crowd, and the polished performances that dazzled millions, there was a quieter, more complicated reality unfolding for Darci Lynne, a reality that many child stars understand, but few ever speak about out loud. Darci reportedly shared that dealing with public recognition has always been a strange experience for her, one that walks a fine line between heartwarming and overwhelming. In her words, "Getting recognized in public is something I'll never get used to. Sometimes it's so socially anxious, but I also love talking to people, so it's a weird balance." And really, how many young teens can relate to that? Most are trying to figure out who they are quietly, under the radar. But Darci had to navigate that process while being watched by millions. Every trip to the grocery store, every walk through an airport, she wasn't just a girl named Darci. She was Darci Lynne, the puppet girl from AG. And being constantly recognized meant she couldn't just be a normal teenager living a normal life. The pressure to keep smiling, to always say the right thing, to match the image people had of her, it was exhausting. But perhaps even heavier than the public attention was the pressure to always perform at her absolute best. Darci once explained that there's this unspoken idea in the entertainment world that you only get one shot, one chance to show what you're made of, and you'd better not mess it up. You just really want to almost be perfect, and you kind of just get one chance to do that. So it's definitely a high-stakes thing, she said. When she returned for AGT, the champions, that pressure didn't lessen, it intensified. In fact, she admitted that her nerves were 10 times worse than during her very first audition. Most people would assume that experience makes things easier, that success would give her confidence. But for Darci, it was the opposite. The more she succeeded, the more she felt the weight of people's expectations on her back. And those expectations didn't just come from fans, they were woven into the very structure of how people viewed her career. The judges' reactions to her evolving performances made things even harder. Some embraced her desire to try new things and evolve as an artist, but others made it clear that they were disappointed when she stepped away from the puppets, the very talent that had defined her rise to fame. She was stuck between staying true to her creative instincts and keeping fans and judges satisfied. Then there was the simple reality of growing up in the public eye. Most kids get to figure themselves out in private. They go through awkward phases, make mistakes, try on different personalities, and learn from it all without anyone really noticing. But not Darci. Her adolescence was documented, commented on, and sometimes even judged by people she had never met. Despite all the challenges, Darci has remained thoughtful and determined to stay grounded. She's been open about her desire to keep evolving, not just as a performer, but as a person. "I'd love to maybe grow a little more in my music because I love to sing by myself," she once shared. That simple statement carries so much weight. It's not just about music, it's about independence, identity, and the need to be seen for who she is now, not just who she was at 12. Even her approach to health and wellness became part of managing the emotional toll. Darci has credited fitness with helping her stay sane amid the chaos. "Fitness has helped me be my best self for my work and overall life. It keeps me healthy and happy," she said. It was more than just a way to stay in shape. It became a coping mechanism, a way to maintain some control over a life that often felt unpredictable. She made us laugh, cheer, and cry happy tears. But what really happened to Darci Lynne after the lights went out? Stick around, because the ending might just break your heart. The heartbreaking tragedy of missed opportunities. Darci Lynne's post-win journey on America's Got Talent has been nothing short of a roller coaster, a thrilling, sometimes frustrating ride that's left fans cheering, fuming, and scratching their heads in equal measure. For many of those who followed her rise from a charming young ventriloquist to a seasoned performer, her subsequent appearances on AGT The Champions and AGT Fantasy League have felt like chapters in a story filled with heart-tugging near misses. How could someone so undeniably talented keep coming up just shy of victory? That's the question many have asked again and again, as they've watched her brave the high-stakes world of competitive talent television after already tasting glory. Fast forward to 2024 and her run in AGT Fantasy League, and the déjà vu was hard to ignore. This time, Darci chose to do something bold, something that spoke to her growth as an artist. She decided to perform her original song, Push Our Luck, and notably, she did so without her puppets. That's right, no Petunia, no Oscar, no Edna. Just Darci and her voice. It was a clear statement. This wasn't about the gimmick. This was about her music. But that decision didn't pay off in the way she'd hoped. She was eliminated in the semifinals, this time with no wildcard reprieve. And who advanced instead? A shadow puppeteer named Shadow Ace. Yes, a performer whose act required no vocals and no original material managed to capture the hearts of the superfans over a young woman performing her own song. It was a moment that left fans stunned and, frankly, a little heartbroken. Could it be that stepping away from her signature act cost her the votes? Or was it that people weren't ready to accept Darci outside of the ventriloquist box they'd put her in? And that brings us to the fan reactions, which were intense and immediate. Following her elimination on Champions, polls revealed that nearly half of the audience, 42% to be exact, felt she'd been robbed. Social media lit up with angry messages aimed squarely at the show's superfan voting system. Whoever the so-called superfans are, don't know what they're doing. one viewer complained. Another commented bitterly, "If they keep this up, the wrong person will win every time." The backlash wasn't just a small murmur, it was loud and emotional, and it pointed to something deeper than just disappointment. It reflected the feeling that talent alone wasn't enough anymore, that the system itself might be broken. Still, Darci's fans weren't all about outrage. Many stepped up with messages of support that showed just how much she meant to them. After her Fantasy League exit, social media was again filled with praise, but this time it had a different tone. People seemed to understand and even admire her decision to break from tradition and take a risk. "She doesn't care," one fan wrote. "She wanted to sing, and if she won or lost, it wouldn't have mattered. All she wanted was to go on stage and show she could sing." And maybe that was the most important win of all. So while some might see her AGT losses as setbacks, there's another way to look at it. What if those moments weren't failures at all, but part of a bigger story about growth, courage, and the refusal to be boxed in? What if Darci Lynne is redefining what it means to succeed in front of millions? For fans who've followed her from the very beginning, it's hard not to wonder, what's next for her? And more importantly, will the world be ready to accept Darci not just as the puppet girl with a golden voice, but as the full-fledged artist she's becoming right before our eyes? With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.